The night was cold and heavy. The human man, Daniel, walked slowly across the edge of the ruined colony. He had come here only to look for supplies. Maybe food, maybe tools, nothing more. But then he heard a soft sound, a cry, a whisper that did not belong to the wind. He stopped, his hand near his old rifle. From the shadows came a figure, thin, trembling, carrying two small shapes close to her chest. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Not human eyes, but not cruel either. She was an alien woman, and behind her, two small children hid, clinging to her torn cloak. Daniel frowned, unsure if this was a trap. But before he could move, the woman fell to her knees in the dirt. Her voice broke as she cried out, "Please, take me and my children as your family." The words struck him harder than any bullet. He froze, his mind racing. Why would an alien widow beg a human for such a thing? Why would she lower herself? Kneeling like a slave before him, the children peeked at him, their faces pale with fear and hunger. Daniel could see the lines of exhaustion in the woman's face. Her clothes were ragged, her hands bruised, her body shaking. This was not a trick. This was desperation. "I have nowhere else to go," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They killed my husband. They burned our home. And now they hunt my children." Her words echoed in the empty night. Daniel felt something stir inside him, something he thought he had buried long ago. Still, he kept his voice cold. "Why me?" he asked. "Why should a human take you? When your own kind have turned away?" Her lips trembled. Her head bowed lower because humans still have hearts. She said, "Because you are all I have left." For a long moment, silence filled the air. Daniel looked at the stars above, then back at her. He remembered the war, the cruelty of alien and human alike. He remembered loss, pain, betrayal. He had sworn never to carry another burden, never to protect anyone again. And yet, here she was, asking the one thing he thought impossible. Not food, not safety, but family. The children clung to her tighter, their wide eyes reflecting both fear and hope. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He stepped closer, his boots crunching against the broken ground. The woman lifted her face slowly, tears tracing lines down her cheeks. Her eyes pleaded without words. For a moment, Daniel almost spoke, but then he noticed something. Shadows moved in the distance, figures with harsh lights searching the ruins. Hunters, traders, men who dealt in flesh. They were coming closer, and they had already seen the widow. Daniel cursed under his breath. This was no place for hesitation. But he could not ignore the danger of her plea. Taking her and her children would mean war with those who chased them. Walking away would mean their death. The widow sensed the same. She pressed the children against her chest and whispered, "Please, if you leave us, they will take my children. They will sell them. I beg you." Her voice broke again, sharp and painful. Even the children whispered softly, "Please, help." Wells, Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to turn away, to walk back into the shadows, to pretend he had never heard her words, but something inside him did not allow it. The old soldier in him, the man who once believed in protecting the weak, refused to stay silent. The sound of boots and engines grew louder. The hunters were almost upon them. Daniel clenched his fists, the weight of his rifle heavy at his side. His mind screamed for him to walk away. But his heart was already choosing. He looked down at the alien widow and her children. He saw not strangers, not enemies, but a broken family standing at the edge of despair. His breath was slow, steady as he spoke. "You are asking for more than you understand," he said quietly. "Family is not a small thing." The widow nodded, desperate, her forehead touching the dirt. "Then let me give you everything I have," she said. "My loyalty, my trust, my life. If only you will save my children, Hunters' voices echoed nearer, their flashlights cutting through the night. Daniel's heart pounded. The choice stood before him like a wall: walk away and be free, or take the widow and her children and never turn back. The woman's voice trembled one last time. "Please, human, do not let my children die." Daniel gritted his teeth. The plea was no longer just words. It was a chain pulling at his soul. And he knew, whatever he chose tonight, his life would never be the same again. The hunters stepped into the ruins, their lights sweeping across the broken walls. The widow held her children close, eyes wide with terror. Daniel raised his rifle slowly. If he chose them, the fight would begin now. The night was about to explode, and the plea still echoed in his ears, louder than the coming footsteps. The ruined colony was no longer silent. The hunters' voices grew louder. Their lights cut through the dark like knives. Daniel stood frozen, the alien widow and her children huddled at his feet. Her words still echoed inside his head. "Take me and my children as your family." He gripped his rifle tightly, his breath steady. Part of him wanted to walk away, to vanish into the shadows. He had lived too long avoiding other people's wars. But another part, buried deep inside, refused to abandon the weak. The widow looked up at him, her eyes wet with fear. Her children clung to her torn cloak, trembling as the hunters drew closer. She whispered again, "Please," her voice breaking like glass. It was not only a request, it was a cry of the soul. Daniel's mind spun. He could leave, and no one would blame him. They were strangers, aliens, not his blood, not his duty. Yet, if he left, the hunters would take them. And he would hear their screams in his dreams forever. He shut his eyes for a moment. Memories returned: the battlefield, the faces of children he had once failed to save. The vow he made, never to protect anyone again, never to feel that pain again. But the past did not release him. It held him tight. And now this widow, this plea, reopened every scar. The hunters moved fast, their voices clearer. "Check the ruins," one barked. "The woman is near," another laughed harshly. "Her children will fetch a high price." Daniel's jaw clenched, his chest burned. The widow heard it too, and she pressed her children closer. Her voice shook as she whispered, "If you leave us, they will break us apart. My children will not survive." She lifted her face, tears glowing in the faint light. "I do not ask for wealth. I do not ask for power. I only ask for family." The children spoke at last, their voices soft but sharp. "Please, human," the little boy said. "Don't let them take us." His sister clung to his arm, her small eyes filled with hope that Daniel did not feel he deserved. Hope so fragile it could shatter with one wrong step. Daniel exhaled slowly. He looked at his rifle, then at the woman, then at the night sky above. The stars watched him silently, as if waiting for his choice. Finally, he whispered, "Damn it." And his voice was not cold anymore. The widow's breath caught. Daniel knelt, his eyes level with hers. "If I take you, it means danger," he said. "It means no turning back." Her voice was steady now, desperate but brave. "We have already lost everything," she said. "We are not afraid of danger, only of being alone." The hunters' lights drew closer, bright against the broken walls. Daniel's decision solidified like steel inside him. He stood, his rifle ready. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. The widow pulled her children close and obeyed. Without question, for the first time, she felt a small flame of hope. The human was not walking away. He was choosing them. The hunters stepped into view. 5 men with heavy weapons and cruel smiles. They spotted the widow at once, their leader grinning wide. "There she is," he said, "and the brats too." Then his eyes landed on Daniel. "A human," he sneered. "Step aside, stranger, and we'll let you live." Daniel raised his rifle slowly, the barrel gleaming in the faint light. His voice was cold but steady. "They're under my protection." The hunters laughed, mocking. "You'll die for them," the leader said. "And they're not even your kind." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "They are now," he replied, his words sharp as blades. The widow's heart pounded, her children pressed against her sides for the first time since her husband's death. She felt the warmth of someone standing between her and death. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you," though Daniel did not look back. The hunters began to spread out, circling him. The leader spat on the ground. "Kill him. Take the woman alive. And don't damage the brats too much." There. Boots pounded against the dirt as they moved in. Daniel's grip tightened. His decision was already made. The night exploded with noise. Gunfire cracked, shadows flashed, and the battle began. The widow screamed softly. Shielding her children, Daniel moved with deadly skill, each shot precise. His body remembering old wars he thought he had left behind, but the hunters were many, and they pressed hard. Bullets tore through walls, sparks flew, dust filled the air. The widow's children cried. Clinging tighter, Daniel gritted his teeth, his body burning with effort. Still, he stood firm. Still, he did not let them pass. His voice roared over the chaos. "Stay down," he shouted, protecting the family that was not his blood, but was now his responsibility. The fight raged, but deep inside, Daniel knew something had already changed the moment he stepped forward. The moment he raised his rifle, the decision was no longer about strangers, it was about family, as the last bullet echoed into the night. Silence fell again. The hunters pulled back for now, retreating into the shadows, their leader's voice carried across the ruins, cold and sharp. "You can't hide forever. Human, they belong to us, and we will take them." Then they were gone, leaving only silence and smoke. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, his breath heavy. He turned to the widow, who was still clutching her children. Her eyes met his, filled with both fear and gratitude. "You chose us," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Daniel's face was hard, but his words were quiet. "I made my decision," he said. "Now we survive together." The widow bowed her head. Her children pressed close to Daniel, as if they already believed his promise. And though danger still waited in the dark, one truth was clear. A family had begun in the ruins, born from a plea and a decision. But in the shadows, the hunters were not finished. They had seen the children, and they knew something Daniel did. Not something that made the chase far more dangerous than he imagined. The night was only the beginning. The ruins smelled of smoke and dust. Daniel stood with his rifle still warm in his hands. The alien widow and her children stayed close behind him, their faces pale but alive. The hunters had pulled back, but their words still echoed in the night. "We will take them," Daniel's chest rose and fell, his body tense. He knew they would not stop. Hunters never gave up, not when they had seen a prize, and those children were more than a prize. He could feel it, though he did not yet understand why. The widow placed a trembling hand on his arm. "We must move," she whispered, her voice urgent but soft. "They will return with more men. With stronger weapons, we cannot stay." Her children nodded quickly, their wide eyes begging him to act. Daniel glanced around, scanning the broken buildings. The ruins were open, dangerous, easy to surround. He had survived too many battles to make the mistake of waiting. He gave a sharp nod. "Then we move." The widow clutched her children close. "Do you know a safe path?" he asked, his voice steady. She hesitated, then pointed toward the dark hills beyond the colony. "There are caves," she said. "Old mining tunnels, they are deep and hard to track." Daniel checked the sky clouds, covered the moon, giving them shadows to hide. It was risky, But risk was all they had. He motioned with his hand. "Stay close. Don't fall behind." The widow obeyed, her children holding her torn cloak as they moved quickly through the ruins. Every step was heavy with fear. Broken walls loomed over them, shattered glass crunched beneath their boots. Daniel's ears caught every sound, the rustle of wind, the whisper of shifting stone, the distant growl of engines. The hunters were searching, and they were not far. The little girl stumbled, her legs weak from hunger. Daniel turned quickly, his arms strong as he lifted her without a word. She clung to his shoulder, her small face pressed against his jacket. The widow's eyes widened at the sight, her heart twisting. For a brief moment, she saw not only a soldier, but something else, a protector. Maybe even what she had begged him to be. They moved faster now, slipping through the ruins. But the hunters were not blind. Lights flashed behind them, shouts rang out, and heavy boots followed. "They found us," the widow gasped. Clutching her son tightly, Daniel's mind raced. He set the girl back on her feet, crouched low, and scanned the ground. There a narrow passage between collapsed walls, small enough for the children, but tight for grown men. "This way," he said, pushing them forward. The children slipped through first, the widow after them. Daniel followed, his rifle ready. The hunters' voices grew louder, their lights cutting across the rubble. Shots cracked, sparks flew as bullets hit stone. The widow screamed softly, pulling her children down. Daniel fired back. Sharp bursts of light, keeping the hunters at bay. Dust filled the air as stone shattered. The little boy cried out, covering his ears. Daniel gritted his teeth, his voice firm. "Keep moving." The widow obeyed, dragging her children forward, her heart pounding in her chest. They slipped through the narrow gap, stumbling into the open fields beyond. The hills rose like dark shadows in the distance, but behind them, the hunters pushed through. Their leader shouting, "Don't let them escape." Engines roared. The hunters had vehicles now, faster than running feet. Daniel cursed under his breath. They needed distance, they needed cover, but the hills were still far. The widow turned, her voice shaking. "We can't outrun them." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his mind sharp. He pointed toward an old, broken water tower lying half collapsed on its side. "We buy time," he said. "Go, hide behind it. Keep the children down." The widow hesitated, fear in her eyes. But his tone allowed no argument. She pulled the children away, running toward the wreck. Daniel dropped to one knee, rifle steady. The hunter's lights grew brighter, closer. He aimed carefully, waiting until their vehicles crossed the open ground. Then he fired, bullets tearing into the engines, sparks flying into the night. One vehicle spun, crashed into rubble, flames rising high. The hunters cursed, shouting orders. Daniel fired again, forcing them to scatter. But they were too many, too strong, and he could not hold them forever. The widow watched from behind the tower, her children clutching her arms. Her heart screamed to run, to flee into the hills. But her eyes stayed locked on the human, the man who had chosen them, who stood alone against hunters with nothing but grit and steel. At last, Daniel shouted, his voice rough, "Move, now." The widow grabbed her children and ran toward the hills. Daniel followed, firing as he retreated. His steps quick but controlled, the hunters pursued. But the night was on their side, the dark hills swallowing them whole. At the base of the hills, they found the caves, just as the widow had promised. Dark, cold, and deep, the tunnels stretched like a maze into the earth. Daniel pushed them inside, his breath heavy, his body burning with exhaustion, but his eyes stayed sharp, his rifle ready at the mouth of the cave. The widow placed her hand on his arm again, her voice trembling but filled with gratitude. "You saved us," she whispered, "even when it meant your life." Daniel did not answer. His gaze fixed on the night beyond the cave. He knew the hunters would not stop, and worse, He knew there was something about these children, something hidden, that made them a greater target than he yet understood. For now, they had escaped. But the chase had only begun. The cave was dark and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing through the tunnels like slow heartbeats. Daniel stood at the entrance, his rifle in hand, his eyes sharp. The widow sat deeper inside with her children, her arms wrapped tightly around them. For a while, silence ruled. The only sounds were the children's soft breathing and Daniel's steady watch. Outside, the night was quiet, but he knew it would not last. The hunters were patient, and they would search until they found them. The widow's voice broke the silence. "You should not have stayed for us," she whispered. "Now you are trapped too." Daniel did not look back, his voice calm but rough. "I made my choice," he said. "Now we survive together." Her eyes glistened in the faint light. She lowered her head, whispering, "You do not know what you've chosen?" Daniel frowned at her words, but before he could ask, a little boy shifted, pulling back his sleeve. A faint glow spilled from his skin. It was soft, like moonlight, forming a strange mark across his arm. Daniel turned sharply, his rifle lowering as he stared. "What is that?" he asked. His voice tense, the widow gasped and quickly pulled the boy close, hiding the glow under his cloak. Her face pale, her body trembling. "It is why they hunt us," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "My children are not only mine. They carry something my people would kill for." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Explain," he demanded, his tone sharp. The widow shook her head, pain filling her eyes. "My husband was no ordinary man. He was part of an ancient line, one that carried secrets of power, knowledge that others seek, knowledge buried in blood." Daniel's breath slowed, his gaze flicking between the widow and her children. "So they're not just after you," he said. "They're after what the children carry." The widow nodded slowly, tears falling down her cheeks. "They will never stop, not until they have them. Not until my children are broken and used." The little girl whimpered, clinging tighter to her mother. Daniel's chest tightened as he saw the fear in their eyes. He had thought he was saving a family from slavers, but now he realized he had stepped into something much deeper. Still, he did not move away. He crouched closer, his voice calm, though his mind burned with questions. "What does it mean for them?" he asked. "This mark, this secret." The widow's lips trembled. "It means they are the key," she whispered. "The key to awakening an ancient weapon, one that could destroy worlds." Daniel's eyes darkened. He had fought in wars. He had seen weapons tear planets apart. And now 2 small children carried the seed of such destruction inside them. His gut twisted, but he did not let fear show. The widow's voice shook as she continued. "My husband died protecting them, hiding them from those who knew the truth." Her arms tightened around the children. "Now you know why I begged you to take us as family. Because only a family can protect what the whole galaxy wants to steal." Daniel leaned back against the cave wall, his thoughts heavy. He had chosen to protect them out of instinct, out of compassion, but now the weight of his choice was crushing. He was not only protecting a widow and 2 children, he was protecting a secret that could reshape the galaxy. The boy shifted again. The glow peeking through, Daniel placed a steady hand on the child's shoulder. "Keep it hidden," he said firmly. "Don't show it unless you must." The boy nodded quickly, his wide eyes trusting the human more than his own fear. The widow watched in silence, her heart torn between gratitude and dread. She knew the hunters would come again, stronger, with more weapons, and she knew Daniel would fight them. But how long could one man stand against an army? Daniel pushed himself to his feet, his rifle heavy in his hands. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice sharp. "They'll track us." And caves are death traps if they seal the exits. The widow rose slowly, carrying her daughter as the boy clung to her cloak. Then, "Where?" she asked, fear lacing her words. Daniel looked toward the deeper tunnels. "Through the mines," he said. "If we move fast, we can lose them in the labyrinth." The widow's breath caught. "It is dangerous," she whispered. "The tunnels run for miles. Many are broken, unstable." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Danger is better than capture. The children shivered at his words. But when Daniel gave a sharp nod, they obeyed. Following him deeper into the black tunnels, their steps echoed softly, the darkness swallowing them whole. Behind them, far outside, the hunters had returned. Flashlights cut across the hills, engines roared, and voices carried through the night. "Find the caves," the leader barked. "The human has them, and the children must be taken alive." In the shadows of the cave, Daniel moved like a ghost, his rifle ready. The widow whispered prayers under her breath. Her children pressed against her sides, every step deeper into. The earth carried them away from safety and deeper into danger. But there was no turning back. At last, Daniel raised his hand, stopping them. He pointed toward a split in the tunnels, two paths stretching into the dark. He whispered low, "We choose one." "They'll expect us to hesitate." The widow's heart raced. "Which way?" she asked. Her voice shaking, Daniel looked at the children, then at the widow. His answer was quiet but firm, "The way they won't expect." He led them into the left tunnel, the darkness swallowing them, and behind them. The hunters' voices grew closer, echoing like demons in the earth. The secret was no longer safe. The chase was no longer simple. And Daniel knew protecting this family was no longer about choice. It was destiny. The night was quiet, but Thomas could not sleep. The small house felt warmer now, with the alien widow and her two children inside. Yet he knew safety was only an illusion. The colony was still dangerous, and strangers were always watching. He had taken a risk bringing them into his home, and risks always came with a cost. The widow, Lyra, sat near the fire with her children. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, showing both fear and gratitude. Thomas watched her carefully. Wondering if he had done the right thing, he had promised to protect them. But could he really keep that promise in a world that punished weakness? Suddenly, a sharp knock broke the silence. Thomas stood instantly, his hand moving toward the old weapon on the wall. No one ever came to his house this late. His heart raced. As the knock came again, louder this time, the children gasped and huddled closer to their mother. Lyra's face turned pale, and she whispered, "They found us." Thomas raised his hand, signaling her to stay quiet. He stepped toward the door. His footsteps slow but steady. Every sound felt louder in the stillness of the night. He opened the door only a little, just enough to see the shadow of a figure. Standing outside, the figure leaned forward, and a voice whispered, "You are hiding them, aren't you?" Thomas froze. The voice was calm, but it carried danger inside it. He pushed the door wider, and in the moonlight, he saw a man he recognized. It was Joran, one of the patrol guards who worked for the local governor. Joran was known for his cruel loyalty. Wherever Joran went, trouble followed. "What do you want?" Thomas asked, his tone flat. Joran's eyes narrowed as he tried to look past Thomas. "Into the house, I want to know why a human farmer is keeping his fire burning so late." "Who are you hiding in there?" Joran asked. Thomas tightened his grip on the door, blocking the view. "No one you need to worry about, just me," Thomas replied. Joran smirked, his sharp teeth glinting. "I heard whispers in the market today." He said slowly, "They say an alien widow escaped from the governor's prison. With two half-starved children, they say someone helped her. And I smell the truth right here." Inside, Lyra clutched her children tightly. Her body trembled and her eyes filled with fear. She knew that if Joran saw them, everything would end. The governor's men would drag her children away, and she would be punished. She silently prayed that Thomas would not betray them. Thomas kept his face calm. Though anger boiled inside him, "You should leave," he said firmly. "This is my land, not the governor's." Joran's smile widened, but it was not friendly. "You always were strange, Thomas. A lonely man living far from the town. Now I see why you like keeping secrets." Thomas took a step forward, his eyes locked on Joran's. "Get off my land," he repeated, his voice low but dangerous. The tension grew heavy. The air between them thick like storm clouds. For a moment, neither moved. Then Joran leaned close and whispered, "I will find out the truth, and when I do, you will regret standing in my way." With that, Joran turned and walked back into the darkness. The sound of his boots on the dirt faded slowly. But the fear he left behind stayed heavy in the room. Thomas closed the door and leaned against it. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths. He turned and saw Lyra's eyes shining with tears. The children looked at him with both hope and terror. "They know," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "They will come for us." Thomas shook his head. "Not while I am here," he said, but even as he spoke, he knew the danger had grown. Joran would not stop. The governor's men would search, and when they did, they would come with more than questions. Lyra reached out and touched his arm. Her hand was cold, trembling, yet strong in its own way. "Why do you risk this for us?" she asked softly. Thomas looked at her and then at the children. He thought of his own past, the family he had lost long ago. "I made a promise," he answered, "and I keep my promises." Outside, the wind howled across the barren land. The night seemed darker than before. The fire crackled inside, but its warmth felt fragile. Danger had already found their door, and Thomas knew it would return soon. The house no longer felt like a safe place. It felt like the center of a storm, but inside that storm, a strange bond was growing between a human man and an alien widow. Between fear and hope, between the past and the future, Thomas tightened his grip on the weapon by the wall. He knew sleep would not come tonight. And tomorrow, everything might change, but one thought burned bright inside him: he would fight. For them, no matter the cost. The night was calm. But Daniel could not sleep. He kept thinking about the strange signs around his home. The alien widow and her children were safe inside, but something felt wrong outside. The silence was too heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Daniel stepped out quietly with his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the trees. For a moment, everything seemed normal, but then he noticed broken branches, crushed soil, and deep footprints near the fence. They were too big to be human. Something had been here. Watching, he returned inside, trying not to alarm anyone. But the widow Lyra noticed his face. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, someone or something was here, watching us. Her eyes filled with fear. They found us, the children, still half asleep, stirred from the sound of their mother's trembling voice. Daniel made them go back to bed, but the tension in the house grew heavier. He looked at Lyra and said firmly, "Tell me the truth, Lyra. Who is after you? Why are they here?" Lyra hesitated, her lips trembling. "They are called the Raw Hunters," she admitted. "They track widows like me. They see us as weak, easy prey. They want to sell us, or worse," her voice cracked. "They don't just take us. They make us disappear." Daniel felt his chest tightened. So this was bigger than he thought. Not just survival, but a deadly pursuit. And now they had found his home. He clenched his fists. "Then we fight back." Lyra shook her head. Panic in her eyes. "No, you don't understand. The Roll are stronger, faster, and cruel." You are only one man, Hal. Can you protect us from them? But Daniel didn't flinch. I promised you, Lyra, I would keep you and the children safe. And I won't break that promise. The night passed slowly, filled with fear. Every shadow outside felt alive. Every noise made the children cling tighter. To their mother, Daniel kept watch with his old rifle, standing at the window. He knew he could not let them see his fear. He had to stand tall, even if inside he was trembling. The morning came, but instead of relief, it brought a new discovery. Strange markings were burned into the ground outside, symbols Daniel had never seen before, glowing faintly. Lyra gasped when she saw them. They left a sign. A warning, she whispered. They want us to know they are close. They want us to be afraid. Daniel studied the marks, his mind racing. This was not just about hiding anymore. It was about preparing. If the royal hunters wanted to come, then they would face him first. But deep inside, he wondered how long could he stand against creatures he did not even understand. Later that day, while the children played quietly inside, Daniel and Lyra spoke in hushed voices. She told him more about the Raoul. Their skin was like armor, their eyes like burning coal. They hunted not just for money, but for pleasure. For them, fear was as sweet as blood. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought humans before, but never monsters like these. Still, he could not back down. He began reinforcing the house, boarding the windows, sharpening tools, preparing traps near the fence. Every action reminded him of old war days. But this time, it was not his life alone on the line. This time, he was protecting a family that trusted him. As the sun began to set again, the children grew restless. They could feel the tension in the air. Little Aaron asked softly, "Will they come tonight?" Daniel knelt beside him and smiled gently. "If they come, I'll be here. And I won't let them take you." The boy's eyes lit with fragile hope, and he hugged Daniel tightly. That small gesture gave Daniel the strength he needed. When darkness fell, the silence returned. Daniel waited at the window, rifle in hand. Then he heard the low growl of something moving in the woods. Not one, but many. The shadows shifted. Eyes glowed faintly in the trees. The Raw were here, circling. Waiting, Lyra held her children close, whispering prayers. Daniel took a deep breath, his fingers steady on the trigger. The hunters thought they would find weakness, but tonight, they would discover a man ready to fight for his family. The standoff had begun. And Daniel knew this was only the start of a war. The night sky above the small human house was calm. But inside, tension was growing. John sat near the fire, trying to stay awake. The alien widow, Lyra, had finally let her children sleep peacefully. But she herself could not rest. Her eyes kept moving to the window. She felt something out there, something watching. For days, she had lived in fear. Her people had been hunted, and she had lost everything except her children, now in this human's house. She felt safe, but not completely. Safety was only an illusion when enemies still roamed the galaxy. John noticed her unease. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked quietly. Lyra's eyes widened. "You sense it as well," she whispered. John nodded. "Someone is out there," he said, his voice low but steady. The fire flickered, shadows dancing on the walls. Outside, the wind carried strange sounds, not the usual rustle of trees, not the calls of night creatures. It was heavier, mechanical, like footsteps, too careful to be human. Lyra stood, her body tense. "If they have found me," she said, trembling, "they will not stop until I am taken. Until my children are gone." John stood beside her. "Not while I'm here," he said firmly. The children stirred in their sleep, as if they could feel the tension. John moved to the door, gripping the old weapon he kept near. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "You do not understand who hunts me." she whispered. They are not like you. Not like your people. They are cruel and merciless. John looked into her eyes, calm but determined. Doesn't matter, he said. If they come here, they'll face me first. A sudden crash outside made them both freeze. Something metallic scraped against the ground. John motioned for Lyra to stay back with the children. But Lyra stepped forward instead, her voice firm. No, if it is them, I cannot hide. I must face this. John shook his head. Not alone, he said. Not anymore. The door rattled as something struck it from the outside. The children woke, crying. Lyra rushed to them, whispering comfort. John raised his weapon. Pointing it at the door, the wood creaked, splinters flying as the force grew stronger. Then, silence. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then a voice came, deep and distorted. Speaking through a device, alien widow, surrender yourself, or the human dies. Lyra froze, terror filling her eyes. She looked at John, her lips trembling. They know, she whispered. They always know. John's jaw tightened. They think threatening me will make you give up, he said, his voice calm but cold. Lyra's tears fell silently. I cannot lose you, she said, her voice breaking. I cannot let my children lose the only safe place they have known. John turned to her. Then we don't surrender, he said simply. Another crash came. This time at the window, dark shapes moved outside, glowing red eyes peering in. The hunters had come, silent and swift. Lyra clutched her children's clothes, whispering words in her alien tongue. John steadied his aim, the firelight reflected in his eyes, making him look almost inhuman himself. The door gave way with a final crack. Figures stepped inside, tall, armored. Shadows of death, Lyra gasped, pulling her children behind her. The leader of the hunters raised a weapon, pointing it directly at John. Step aside, human, the voice growled. This is not your fight. John didn't move. His voice was steady, almost calm. It is now, he said. The first shot fired, bright energy tearing through the room. John rolled to the side, returning fire with his own weapon. Sparks flew. Walls shook. The children screamed. Lyra shielded them, her heart breaking with every blast. John fought with a strength she had never seen before. But there were too many. The hunters advanced, slowly cornering him. One of them reached for Lyra. She screamed, pushing the child behind her. But then, something inside her broke. A power she thought lost returned. Her body glowed faintly, energy sparking at her fingertips. The hunter recoiled, surprised. Lyra herself stared at her hands, shocked. She had not felt this strength since before. Her people had fallen. John glanced at her. Wide-eyed, you can fight? He shouted. Lyra shook her head, trembling. I thought it was gone. But the fear, the love for my children, it woke something inside. Her voice shook, but her eyes blazed with new determination. Together, John and Lyra stood against the hunters. The room filled with light, fire, and sound. The children cried, but they also watched. Seeing their mother rise not as a victim, but as a fighter, the battle was not over. But something had changed. For the first time, Lyra was not only pleading to survive, she was ready to fight. And as the hunters regrouped outside for another assault, John and Lyra stood side by side, the human and the alien widow, united by fear, by courage, and by something even stronger. A family worth fighting for.